Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to draw boxes in 1 point and 2 point perspective. Some things that you're going to need are a pencil with an eraser and a ruler. So we're going to start first with 1 point perspective. So this is where all of the orthogonal lines, those are your lines that move away from you, are going to one single vanishing point. This line across here is our horizon line. This is the vanishing point. And then these lines are orthogonal lines. So we have to start by creating all of our orthogonal lines. So this box is already started for us. So we're going to start with this one. So you can see from each corner of your shape, here we have a long rectangle. From these two corners, there are lines going towards the vanishing point. We need to do that for the other two corners. So you want to make sure that your ruler is lined up on the vanishing point and on the corner. You want to make sure that the ruler doesn't slide off of the vanishing point or slide off of the corner of the box. Take your time, make sure they're lined up well, and then just lightly draw a line. Make sure you draw very light because you will need to erase part of it later. Go ahead and do this for the other corner of the square, or the rectangle rather. Line it up with the corner and the vanishing point, and do a light line that comes across. Okay, so what we have to do now is we have all of our orthogonals established. Now, you might notice that there's this little line going through these two orthogonal lines. This is that far back edge of the box. This is just one of the edges. We need to get the other three edges. Basically, what we're doing here is we're creating a smaller version of this rectangle inside of the orthogonal lines. Now, you want to make sure that this line is nice and straight and it's not turning a little bit diagonally off to the side. You want it to be very parallel to this bottom line. So use your ruler to help you out here. Your ruler might have some little tick marks or a line on it that can help you make sure that if you get crooked, see how this line right here doesn't line up with this anymore. We want to make sure it's nice and straight and parallel. What you could also do is line up your ruler with this line on the bottom of the rectangle and slide it down and try to keep it consistent. Then you bring your line across and stop at that orthogonal line. We're going to do the same thing up here. Now this one's going to get a little bit hidden under that bottom line that we have. We're going to do the same thing over here. Want to line up our ruler, slide it over. And that's the back edge of the box. Now what we can do is erase these extra lines that we don't need anymore. So now we have basically a transparent box. We can see through it. Let's do another one. Let's do this bottom one down here. This one isn't started for us. It does have the square, but we know from this experience that every corner of the square has an orthogonal line that goes to the vanishing point. So I'm just going to do this process 4 times for each corner. Okay, so now we have all of our orthogonals. Now we get to figure out how long we want our box to be. Do we want it to be like a really short cube? Do we want it to be a really long rectangular prism? I'm going to say that I want my cube to be about this big. Now, I want to make sure that this line is very, very vertical. It has to be parallel to this line. So you can take your ruler and line it up and just slide it over and try to make sure it's as parallel as possible. And then between these two corners, we're essentially creating this edge, but back here. So between these two orthogonals right here, we create a line that goes across. It goes right across this line right here because this doesn't have anything to do with this part. This is from this corner, it's going that way. Just don't worry about that. You want to make sure that this line fits nicely between these two corners. Now we're going to go this way. We want to put a line for the lower back edge of the box. I'm taking my ruler, sliding it up to meet up with that new edge that I just created, bringing my line across. Okay. We're going to do the same thing over here. Slide it over, keep it parallel. Bring it up to fit inside of these two orthogonal lines. Don't let the original square confuse you. Don't worry about that guy right now. Now we're going to take this edge and then slide it up and connect those two lines. So now you essentially have a smaller square right behind the original bigger square. We can erase our extra lines that we don't need anymore. And remember to erase this line too. Because our box is see-through, that might confuse you, but that line inside of the square gets erased. So now I have a cube. Let's do one more. This one's a little bit different because it's right on top of the horizon line. It's not above or below like those two were. So this one's a little bit different. It's going to look a little bit different. You're not going to be able to see the bottom. See how we can see the bottom of this box and we can see the top of this box? We're not going to be able to see the bottom or the top. But go ahead, just like we were doing before. It's the same process. Bring some lines across from each corner to the vanishing point. There we go. Now we're going to do this process again. We want to create that back edge. So in order to do that, we need to line up our ruler with the edge, slide it over, figure out how far over you want to go. I'm going to go to about right here this time. Okay. Now, same thing over here. From the top line, we're going to go down until we meet that vertical line that we just created. Bring it over. Same thing over here. You want to work your way around the box. You don't want to do side, side, top, bottom. You want to do side, top, side, bottom, or something like that, because this is how you make sure that all of your lines are going to be in the right place. And you'll know if something is off because it's going to look a little funky. Slide this up, and those two lines should connect. Now we can go ahead and erase all of these extras, and don't forget to erase these guys inside here as well, because those aren't actually part of our box. Those are just extra orthogonal lines. So that's 1 point perspective. It's a little tricky to kind of understand the first time around, but once you get some practice, it makes a lot of sense. Now we're going to move on to 2 point perspective. In my opinion, 2 point perspective is actually easier than 1 point, which most people would initially disagree with, but I actually find that it's just a much smoother, easier process. So let's start with this bottom one, which is already started for us. Instead of squares, we have these lines. That's because we're not being faced with like a side of the box. It's the edge instead. This is the edge of the box that we're going to see. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So we have this line here. This was our starting line. And then there are two orthogonals that come off of that line, okay? On this side of the line, we're going to do lines that are identical to these, except they're going to these two, or this vanishing point rather. 2 point perspective means there's two vanishing points instead of one. So just like you did with your squares, you're going to bring orthogonal lines over, except instead of doing it from four corners of a square, you're doing it from the two ends of a line. So right now you've got this big sort of chevron shape. Now notice that I already got started for you a line that kind of marks off where the back edge of the box is. We want to do one over here too. We want to make sure it's still very vertical. Slide this over. You can decide wherever you want this to stop. I'm going to stop about right here. Now what I'm going to actually do is erase these lines now, because I've already established where the edge of my box is going to go, and you can already kind of see the sides of the box forming. I don't need those lines anymore. They're going to confuse me, so I'm just going to erase them. And now, how can we figure out where the top of the box is? Well, this is where you really want to pay attention, because you might get a little bit lost here. We just made this line, okay? We're done with this line. We don't need to worry about him anymore. This line and this line. From the tops, we want to bring an orthogonal line over to the vanishing point that's furthest away from it. If you drew an orthogonal line back to this vanishing point, you just redraw that line that we just erased. So go ahead and grab your ruler, line it up with the top line of this edge of your box, and then line it up with the vanishing point that's furthest away from that edge. That would be this guy. And draw an orthogonal. We're going to do the same thing for this one. Line it up with the top of that line, or that edge. Bring an orthogonal line over it. I'm just going to actually stop right there because I just made the top of my box. And now we can erase the extra. Now, what if we wanted our box to be see-through? Well, instead of working from the top lines, work from the bottom lines now. Same process, just with the bottoms of the lines. Line up your ruler with that corner and line it up with the furthest away vanishing point and bring an orthogonal line across. Same thing over here. Line up your ruler with this corner, the bottom of that line, line it up with the furthest vanishing point, bring an orthogonal across, and now we can erase this extra stuff. Now we're missing one thing, and that's the furthest away edge. If you take your ruler and line it up with these two corners that we just made, you have that back edge of your box. Now let's do this process a couple more times. For the one that's above the horizon line, it's going to be very similar to this one. It's just that this one's not started for us like this one was. So from the top and the bottom corners of this line, we're bringing orthogonals to both vanishing points. Line up your ruler on the bottom of the line, line it up with the vanishing point, bring a line across, line it up with the bottom, do this for the other vanishing point, bring it across. Now we're going to do the top line. Line up your ruler with the top of the line. I'm going to go this way so you can see a little bit better. Line up your ruler with the top. We just made a triangle. Same thing for over here. Line it up with the top of the line and bring the line over to the vanishing point. Now we get to decide how big we want this box to be. Line up your ruler with the side of this line, this original line that we had. The further away you go, the bigger that box is going to be. I'm just going to make my box about this big. So make sure your line is very vertical. You can draw a line there. And then go ahead and do the same thing this way. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and erase these so that they don't confuse me. Okay, so now we have two sides of our box figured out. Now, in order to do the bottom of the box, just like how we can see the top of the box here, we have to take these two corners, line up our ruler with them, do one at a time, and line it up with the vanishing point that's across from it. We don't want to line it up with this vanishing point, or else we're just going to make that orthogonal that we just erased. So line up the opposite corner with the vanishing point. Bring it across, Do the same thing for this side. Line up this corner with your ruler, align it with the vanishing point, bring it across. I'm going to just stop right there because that's where it meets that line. And you can erase. So that's a solid box. And again, if you wanted it to be transparent or see-through, instead of going from these bottom lines, you would do these top corners. From this top corner here, we line it up with the vanishing point, bring it down, line up this corner with this vanishing point. I'm going to bring it across, and that's where it meets up with that orthogonal. Going to erase that. And then we need to just get that little back edge of our transparent box. So it should line up nicely. And then you just connect those two corners. Let's do one more. This one is the one that's on top of the horizon line, just like this one was on the horizon line. Same process, just follow along with me. We'll start with the bottom of the line, and we're bringing it over, bringing some orthogonals over to both vanishing points. We're going to do the top of the line next. Bring it over. And bring it over. Determine how big you want your box to be. Let's go really big for this one. So I'm going to slide this way over here. However big you want it to be. So that's one really big side of our box. And then I'm going to make this side not quite as long. We'll go to right here. Okay, now we can erase these extras. Okay, and if we want it to be transparent, same thing. I'm going to start with the bottom lines. Starting with this corner right here. It's going to go over to that vanishing point. Line up this bottom corner with this vanishing point. I'm going to stop where it meets that orthogonal. Okay. Now we're going to do the top. Line up this corner with this vanishing point. And we're going to line up this corner with this one. I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to erase my extra that I don't need. And then these two corners line up together nicely. So there you have it. We drew three boxes in both 1-point and 2-point perspective.